Good morning, everybody. Today I'm going to get a bit personal, okay? I've just celebrated my 50th birthday. that old, huh? Okay. And I've been thinking a lot about the future, when I'm not around, thinking about death. A lot of my friends have already passed away. Some are in hospital. So every day when I wake up in the morning, I ask myself this question: if I'm going to kick the bucket tomorrow, what will I do different? Yeah, this is one of my projects in Seremban. You can see. Okay, I'll just describe it. You probably see the roads and all the platform cuts to be built into bungalows, and this is very real. And obviously, here there are some very good developers. There are some very good intentions going on now that they might want to. This used to be a forest, so some developers are talking about saving the trees and things like that. But good intentions are not good enough. Sometimes we're very failed by professionals, the consultants, engineers, and architects, and myself included. And this is an example how good intentions. So, when the developer wants to save the tree, when the engineers decided it's cheaper to cut the land flat to build shop houses, 3 meters. And I don't think it's cheap because the amount of earth that you remove from that site and cut it away is not a cheap solution. I am a big believer that green is cheap. Now I'll try to illustrate how we do it later. I mean, examples like this is really prevalent in Malaysian development. You've got a forested site, which is in the background, and when the developer gets in, it's just a sea of plastic bags like this. It's quite unfortunate. And then some engineers would say that we can stabilize any slopes. Yeah, we can go to the moon, obviously we can stabilize any slope. I believe in them, but this is what it will look like when the geotechnical engineers get into a steep site. And then after that, they build their houses on it. I don't think these are very intelligent solutions to the way we build in Malaysia. These are all recent examples in very prominent areas of Bangsa and Bukit Damansara. And I think we need to be a bit more intelligent when we deal with construction. And I think we have to look back into our history. Oh, thank you very much. We have to. We have to look at our architectural history and go back maybe 50 years. I mean, some of these houses that our forefathers in the kampungs are building are quite elegant houses, quite well thought through, cross-ventilated, lots of big trees around, nicely proportioned, windows to get the air through if necessary, or otherwise close up if they need the privacy. Fantastic use of space, of buildings lifted up from the ground, from the water, that people can use for community gatherings, for the fishermen mending the nets, in this case a car park, bicycle park, motorcycle park. I think, and these houses are never big. They are always less than 1,000 square foot. And they live a whole family of maybe 10, 15 people in it. This is my grandmother's or my grandparents' house in Ipoh, Chinese village. Yeah? Again, cross-ventilated at the top, very simple building, not more than 1,000 square foot. But recently, in the last 10 years, I think we have departed a lot from this. I don't think we have made any reference to this kind of building architecture, and we have gone to this kind of the buildings are 10,000 square feet, 15,000 square feet. And I keep telling my client, you're not living in a house anymore, you're living in a clubhouse, okay? You need walkie-talkies to talk to your children. This guy obviously is inspired by what's going on in Greece and Italy during the Renaissance time. This other guy probably is inspired by his daughter's wedding cake. Okay, if you think that examples like this are extreme, okay, these are the stuff that we're building all over town, okay, in Tropicana, in certain eco park and everything. Again, it's big houses, 10,000 square feet, all sealed up, totally aircon dependent. No trees. A few examples before, no trees. If they grow any trees, they have to topia it to control it. Roofs that are really big, the rain comes in, then the roof doesn't do its job, so they have to add this little duct thing to protect the main door. So houses like this are not intelligent. My argument is any houses that is bigger than 3,000 square foot no longer becomes intelligent. Yeah, it is just people are not building houses to stay, they are just building houses to flaunt the wealth. Yeah, there's so much new wealth going on in Malaysia at the moment. So that is my criticism of it. And if you don't believe me, look at this guy. I hope none of you own this house. So that's my bucket list number one. I think we should live in a lot more human scale houses, look back into our history, and take the progression of architecture to a more reasonable extension of that history. We should be emulating what's going on anywhere else. And I think a lot of our houses are being hijacked by the American mentality, the Las Vegas mentality, where everything needs to be big, everything needs to be loud. 10 years ago, after failing to convince a lot of my developer clients that we should build in a bit more environmentally friendly manner, I decided to carry out this little experiment myself in a little very steep land in Surinder, forested with big trees, or reasonably big trees, and built a house which is about 700 square foot. And the idea is to try to build as cheaply as possible. The kind of proof that what the engineers always tell me is wrong. Every time we go in development, when we say let's try to keep the slope, keep the trees, and we design the roads, design the houses around it, the engineers will always come back to us and say that that's a really expensive way of building. You know, our infrastructure is going to be costly and things like that. We built this house in the jungle of Surinder for less than 80,000 Malaysian ringgit, including infrastructure. Yeah, so the idea is to design structures which are a lot more smaller and using very simple material, because we are basically living in a climate which is actually very easy. It's not like in the West or where I grew up in New Zealand, where the extreme temperature is from -5 to plus 35. You know, we are working on a very tight range of between 26 to 30 degrees or 32 degrees Celsius. So building cladding can be very, very simple because it is a very mild climate. And the inspiration obviously comes from my neighbors, which are the Orang Aslis, which stay in small little houses like this. Yeah? Houses which is 200 square foot, and they can fit in the whole family. Lifted off from the ground, simple materials, no air cons. But I think the key thing that I wanted to emphasize here is really, we talk, it's not really about this thing here, the object. I think what is really more important in a lot of our consideration is what is in the background, which is this. Yeah? So the background is it's just as important as, the context is just as important as the object that we are building. As architects, we always tend to emphasize on this. We want to make a big deal of architecture. Yeah? We want to show to the world, to tell us how clever we are as architects and designing buildings. But really, I think we need to be a bit more humble and look at things like this in the background. And Surinder aspired, Surinder aspired to be like this. It's about building the structure with very minimal structures and making it as transparent as possible. It's not because I like steel or glass, but I think we want to make the building as unobtrusive in an environment like this, so that you can actually see through the building, you get reflection in the glass, and the building almost disappeared. So it is not about the object, it is more about the background. And in the long run, if you take care of the nature, nature will take care of us. We use very simple material, corrugated metal roof. In Bali, that would be a hot material to use, because when the sun hits it, it heats up. In Bali, we use alang-alang to try to temper that, or in Malaysia, we use the atams. But if you take care of nature like this, I guess nature take care of, I don't even use that, the trees just drops all its leaves onto our flat roof, and over the years now it's piled up to about a foot of insulation material, and the houses get cooler and cooler. We don't use aircon whatsoever. It gets really cold at night, in fact. We need to have a fireplace. So this was a little demonstration of using material, building really close to the trees. The slope is about 35 degrees, and we didn't actually do any retaining walls or anything like that. The other thing, I think in order to build cheap and build quality, I think we have to borrow upon things which are free. And to me, I think what is really important in a house, in terms of design, is the light quality. In a lot of my projects, when we come to presentation and I see the interior architects bringing in the awards, it's all about material. Yeah? They show the material of this limestone, granite, that they import from Italy and Norway and India to show patterns and things like that. I mean, that's one way of looking at patterns, one way of looking at textures and materials. But I think what is free for us really is light quality. When light shines through a building and casts shadows, double shades, whether it's of trees, of the architecture, those patterns and those kind of textures are a lot more appealing to us. And we also try to use a lot of indigenous material to build. This slide shows our experimentation of not bringing in any foreign material. We're just digging up the laterite soil from the ground and building walls out of it. And the idea is that the material should be as cheap as possible, and we pay the money for the labor. Yeah, so that we bring back some humanity back into the construction. So the guys hopefully will get, the wages will get 80% of the distribution and the material probably 20%. It's always the other way around in our industry. We pay 80% for really expensive material, and then we use really cheap material and exploited, really cheap labor and exploited labor to build those buildings of us. So bucket list number 2, I want to spend much more on labor, to give money back to the labor and a lot less on the material. And this is how it looks like. Those are some of the mud walls that you see. Nature does its own thing. Algae and moss grows on it. After a while, it creates its own patterns. And the patina of it, obviously, is a lot more interesting than any ICI or Jolton paint that I've used in my project. Yeah. So furniture is the same thing. I think these are PRC materials, really cheap, very lightweight. But the cost is in the labor of actually forming those furniture. So it's based on that philosophy that we can build green but build cheap. Water element, obviously, in Surrender, we have got all these water fountains that drops down the road, and they are all gravity fed, no pumps. So it just makes use of gravity to create all these water effects. Swimming pool used to be using the stream water, but obviously we have to use a recycle system now because upstream we have been polluted by fish farms and things like that. But the idea is, it's not only about the swimming pool, but it's about the background again of the setting and its context. Another small little projects, yeah, I'm just going to show you a lot of my small projects as an illustration of how we think. This is my house in Bangsa, a semi-detached house. And the main thing I think is that you don't see the facade. It's not about the facade. Taxi driver that comes to my house can never find my house. I always have to tell them it's the house next to the number 51 because they can never find 49. They think that it's the garden. So it's not about the facade. As developers, you can save a lot of money on your facade if you plant a lot of vegetation like this in front of it. It's a lot cheaper, I can guarantee you that. So it's less about facade, more about the human scale spaces. I think what is more important is space, the spatial quality in which we develop some of our living environment. This is my living room looking out into the garden. It's a very small building, but when you start to borrow space like that, it becomes a lot larger and more interesting. Living room again. This is the view out from my bedroom, so I borrowed the neighbors and the neighbor's garden. This is right in Bangsa, opposite Bangsa village. This is the existing driveway where this used to be a back of house drying clothes area. We turned it into a room facing a courtyard. And when we built small houses, the houses did not necessarily be small. We're just going to be clever about it and borrow spaces, whether it's outdoor spaces. So rooms like this, which are very small, when you start to extend it into the garden or into a little alleyway or whatever, it starts to become a lot more usable. And we tend to live outdoor all the time because, again, Malaysian weather is actually a very pleasant, mild weather. So we can live outdoor a lot of the time. My family, the kitchen is just next to it. It's like the center of the house. And an open kitchen. It's part of the garden. There's no doors. I don't need to rely on what do you call it, the hob for ventilation or whatever. It's out in the garden. We just use a wall fan and we blow all the smell of the cooking out into the garden. I think the problem is nowadays we are building houses with wet kitchen and dry kitchen. There's a very alien way of cooking in Malaysia. I've gone to a lot of my friends' houses where they have really fancy dry kitchen, but everybody is cooking on the floor in the wet kitchen. So I think we need to look really seriously of how we live. And obviously the dry kitchen is fully decked out with mechanical systems. Yeah? That's not necessarily the best environmentally friendly way of living. This slide is actually quite important to me. I've been collecting a lot of Malaysian art in the last 15 years, and I've been learning a lot from some of my artist friends. This is a painting done by an artist called Choi Chong Wei. And when I start looking at things like that over a long run, it starts to affect my aesthetics. It's about retraining my eyes, and that's the thing that probably Tiffany talked about just now, about this appreciation of third world aesthetics. We cannot, I think, start to emulate stuff that is going on in Germany or America or Shanghai or Singapore, because basically, essentially, Malaysia is still a third world country, and I think we are proudly third world, and we need to find our own way of looking at things which makes us special and makes us cool. So when I start to appreciate things like that, it's kind of start to inform me on things like this. Whereas when I build things, unfinished walls like that looks beautiful to me now. Rather than a tile ceramic finish, or you like it in mosaic or wallpaper or whatever. Things like that, where I demolish all the kitchen tiles and it's left as a raw finish like that. It's actually a very beautiful finish. So when we start to look at things like that, again, it is a lot cheaper. Yeah. We don't need to go and finish this wall. It's like an archaeological site. You look, there's water pipes here and here, and I have great joy looking at all the patterns and stuff like that in it. So it is about trying to dignify third world. I think in Asia that we live in, and I'm really interested to look at this Asian language that we're operating in. I travel a lot in Asia, in Indonesia, in China. There's masses of people. I think we've just hit 7 billion people. She's flashing. Okay, I'll stop soon. In Asia, we live in such a big mass of humanity. 7 million, I think about 4 million stay in Asia. So I want to find solutions and a big proportion of people who live in Asia actually are in the category of poor. And in a third world situation, we need to find some dignity in the way we build, in the sense that more people can enjoy the type of quality lifestyle that we are trying to promote. So it's about this third world aesthetics. We need to train our eyes to look at it so that more people can emulate, more people can start to build in the way I build. I still got a long way to go. Okay, let's see how it goes. I might skip a few sections. Yeah, but anyway, just recycling a lot of material, not finishing, leaving things as raw as possible, keeping it really cheap. This is my bathroom. That's my long bath. My little kiddies pool for my kids to splash in before they take the shower. Bedroom, surrounded by vegetation. I don't even put in curtains because the plants are doing it. I save on the curtains. And by the fact that you can save on other things, you can begin to actually acquire to replace it other things like traditional crafts and artwork. We have also punctured off the ceiling of this semi-detached house, bringing ventilation back into the house, cross-ventilating the house. I don't use aircon in this house anymore. I think I have one aircon in my master bedroom, but I only turn it on for 30% of the time, I think, throughout the year. So we have weaned ourselves of aircon, but the idea is to try to get cross-ventilation back into a house, just like the traditional house that I showed you earlier. So going up into the rooftop, I didn't stand a cent on this because it's all there. What I did was just break off a brick wall and to get up to a rooftop. And we got another space up there, open up for us to use as recreation, a rooftop garden. And we get into the roof. At this level, we got a lot more storage space in the attic. Yeah? All your houses have attic spaces, but none of us use attic spaces for storages, except maybe a water tank. Moving on, this is a factory that I designed for a friend of mine 10 years ago, turning factories into living space. So the idea is about of thinking beyond the convention. Why should our living space our house looks like a house? It can also be an industrial space like that, where there's high ceiling, concrete floor, which is very robust. What we did was we removed the roof, bring the lights in, plant a few trees, remove some of the flooring, and create a space. If you don't believe me, this is the outside of the house. This is the door to it, and that's the same door there. The outside is a factory. Inside is a little oasis that Kong Yu used as a living space. So trees and under all the roof that we remove, we have got all these trellises with plants on it. This is his watering mechanism that he can create his own rain to water his trees. But time passes and the space transforms. I think this is the objective of our design. It is about letting design take its own course. A lot of people think that this is messy, but this looks really beautiful to me because it looks so third world. But it's functional, kitchen in the garden, it's little table made of drain covers. So to us, design is more about timelessness. I get asked a lot of times by magazines and newspapers, what is the latest trend or the new style for next year? That is the wrong question. Don't ask me that question. For design, as architects, we are not fashion designers, we are not shoe designers. Our things are meant to last, and our things are meant to look better and better over time. So it's about training our aesthetics to look at things like this and appreciate it. Bicycles hanging on the wall, it is all part and process of third world living. Another project which I did about 5 years ago is my office in Bangsa, where we turned a semi-detached, single-story semi-detached house into the office. Took off half the roof, and most people would throw away the roof tiles. Our roof tiles are converted into a wall like this. When I first started this, my neighbor thought that I was doing a factory because there were a lot of objections. And just after finish, this wall here is to put into the screen of the morning sun. And after a while, the whole building is cladded again with plants, and you don't see the facade anymore. I think by just doing that, we are pumping in kilograms of oxygen back into our environment. I think in our urban environment, a lot of us are dying early and dying young. And I read in the article, it's because in the urban environment now we are just breathing 50% of the oxygen that we would traditionally breathe when life was simpler. So it is, when we look at this, the invisible things are about the oxygen content and the carbon dioxide that they suck in plant material like this. This is the entrance again, my car park trellis. As you enter, cross-ventilated building with a water body in front. The wind that travels through it gets cooled through the water body and get circulated through the building. This was inspired by the Malay house that I showed you just now. The idea is that the building is at the top, the bottom is where you put your bicycles and your motorbikes. It's a garden where community living can happen. No doors, so it's all about trying to reduce the amount of air conditioning that we use. And because we live in such a hot country, we need to cross-ventilate and cool down our houses through passive means like this. This is a double-skin landscape element that we use to cool the building down. Sun doesn't hit the glass anymore. I think in traditional architecture or cool architecture in Singapore and in Shanghai or whatever, we use a lot of louver systems and aluminum louvers and timber louvers, which are really expensive. This is a lot cheaper for me. It's just using plant material to do the job. And I think the pie in the cake for me is when nature comes back. This little bird's nest here sits on this little tree branch here. And I think that is the most meaningful. That's the soul of the things that we wanted to achieve in our design. Nothing else. It's not about fancy architecture. The back of the building is my meeting room and a balcony beside the tree. The tree being the wall and the ceiling. Allowing sunlight to come into the building, as I say, is important. Most developers in town prefer to make, when they lay out their township, the houses are all north-south oriented. My preference actually is east-west, believe it or not. So, as developers, we need to rethink that, because when you allow light to come into a building like that, it's a lot more pleasant, especially the morning light. Another small little project, before I move on quickly, is this is 2 terrace houses that I developed recently. Again, recycling material. All the construction rubble is converted back into garden walls like that. And it's an experimentation that I'm trying to do to promote this idea of the third world aesthetics, of using local materials and really pushing the limit of how a house can look like, in contrast in terms of the design spectrum to all those fancy houses that is being promoted now in our coffee table books. Yeah? The fancy Singaporean style, which I call it. So this is all about recycled material, recycled doors, recycled timber, just using very cheap 25 cents bricks, concrete, until a point that I think the BKL wasn't very impressed with me. They came with about 60 personnel with a huge bulldozer, 2 loads of policemen to demolish the building. And this was probably the most difficult project I've ever undertaken in my entire life. But after 6 months of negotiation, this is how it looks like now. So it's about trying to not self-censor. I think a lot of the time when I work with developers, we always self-censor. We always try to second-guess what the authority would approve or not approve. I think it is really not about that. If you really want to push green and you want to push cheap and you want to push architecture, it is about being irrelevant to conventions. We have to test the envelope as much as possible. And that's the lesson probably I learned from this project. So these are some of the indoor space, the toilets are outside, the bedroom has got plants in it. Just all recycled doors and timbers and simple material like that. So less concrete, more green. I think that's my hope for the city. I'm going to show you just a few slides of some of these larger, how we translate small ideas into some of our larger projects. This is the PJ development in Petaling Jaya. Opposite the Hilton Hotel, about 6 stories of vertical greenery like that. This is on top of floor 10 rooftop, completed about a year ago. This was how it looks like before. So I think about greening the city, we have a lot of spaces like this on top of a lot of our buildings that is not used. It's like a heat sink, radiating a lot of heat out from the city. And when we get to it, it looks a bit like this. This is about 3 months after implementation. So it's very quick. We put in a whole series of these vertical shelves here. The building leans out, and we stack it with plants like that. And the idea is to just leave the plant to do its own thing. It's about natural ecosystem where we don't intervene. My intervention stopped at the point when we finish this and no more, except watering. So if a bird drop a papaya seed into one of these planter or a ficus tree grows out of it, it's part of the ecosystem. It's about survival of the fittest. And the idea is that nature can do this. I think we can learn something about it. So my hometown of Ipoh, the limestone cliffs are a very harsh environment, hardly any soil in it, but plant thrives on it like that. So that is the motivation. So it's about keeping ourselves really small and in scale, and that humility. Some more experimental project. I get called to do a lot of this kind of stuff in Singapore, where we are looking at greening cities, doing greening walls. This was commissioned by the National Parks Board of Singapore. So it's like a pixelation of a television screen or computer screen where we use plant in a pixelated manner. But what is important, I think the big idea was behind those walls. Even though we had very small space, it is about illusion sometimes, and we work a lot with that in our office, about borrowing spaces. So this space is really small. It's probably about the size of this, or half the size of this stage. But we created an effect of a flower field, which I really enjoyed while I was growing up in New Zealand, that epic landscape. So the trick is by using a whole bundle of mirrors. You see my kids here, they're repeated everywhere. So it's about looking through a one-way interrogation glass, and there's more glasses behind it, and you see millions of flowers like that, even though there's only probably about 500 flowers laid out there. Another project which we did for the National Parks Board last year was how to green up their HDB buildings, high-rises. Everybody got balconies in Singapore, but their balconies they want to green up the balconies. So this was a thing that we developed, which is actually pivoted doors or pivoted planters that you can shop around. So this is the same planter being turned back. The idea is because when the plants will only grow one side where the sun comes in, the back side usually doesn't grow that well facing the room. But when you can pivot it, you can actually turn it around so that both sides can get the sunlight. And also you can use it as a sunscreen, doubling back up as a sunscreen. So on one side it can be flowers, and then when you flip it, it's herbs, it's chilies and things like that. So urban dwellers can start to have a bit of their vertical farm type of thing going on in their own apartments. Rooftop again, this is a Shangri-La rooftop on top of their ballroom, very weight conscious because underneath there's no columns. There's only 4 inches of soil here. We did this about 7-8 years ago. That's our scheme, and that's how we greened it up 6 months later. Treading on the land as lightly as possible. Some of our work in Central Park, where there's minimal intervention. It is all about the background again. The building becomes almost insignificant. Revegetating the wetlands, even though we build concrete structures, it's very little intervention, and making it look as light as possible. Some of our current projects is building to house plants. When we work on really expensive real estate, sometimes we run out of ground floor, so we start to put landscape at higher levels. So the whole idea of the courtyard concept starts to take on the three-dimensional effect, where we go up to the second story or third story, where entertainment decks are happening up in the air. Again, about shadows created by either the vegetation or architectural things. So the idea was to try to get to a stage that we can achieve that Angkor Wat effect, that ruinous effect. This project, I put it in the showcase how we use concrete. Concrete may not be ugly. This is a concrete floor, concrete wall, concrete staircases, everything is concrete, but it's just about the way we detail material, cheap materials. This is another project in Petaling Jaya, where the Penchala Hills are being brought down into this big development called the PJ Trade Center. 20-story high buildings, a whole bunch of them, with a forest coming down to it, and not only coming down to it, but also going inside the building into some of these big glass atriums. And the idea of introducing gardens at high levels, where each of these are garden, and they look a bit like this. This is my hobby horse. I think I'm not interested in the bourgeois elitist houses. I think those things are taken care of by lots of people. I think what we have not taken care of actually are affordable housing in Malaysia. And if there's any developers in here who is interested to build interesting things like that, I will come out of retirement to do something which is more important. This is my hometown, Ipoh. This building was built probably about 40 years ago. I think it's a really elegant building. Low-cost houses with a beautiful safari roof, really skinny, cross-ventilated, with a lot of vent blocks, cross-ventilation, and large openings and shadows and things like that. I think stuff that we are building nowadays for the low cost is really unimaginative. I don't even have problem with buildings like Petaling flats. I think it's a shame that we have demolished Petaling flats, because Petaling flats is one of my favorite building in town. Because I tend to look at it all the time when I drive past, because it's so interesting. You look at this stuff here, the colors of this stuff, and obviously it's informed by the art thing that we go to. This is in Paris. Exhibition in Paris where this artist has hung up all these things. I mean, you see the correlationship between these two. See, it's a piece of artwork, yeah? and we don't realize it. We got gold and we got jewel and we don't realize it. Instead, we build all this horrible concrete thing that you see as low-cost houses today. Planning, yeah, Serena, you've touched on that. I think public transportation is, most of the time when we go into a project, the planners, the first few lines that will draw the drawing will be the highways and the roads. I think that's the wrong way to go. Curitiba that Serena showed us now in Brazil, the entire city has been planned based on public transportation, which are buses. Cheap buses, not necessarily MRTs or expensive LRTs, just buses. But I think those things are also very well taken care of by the professionals. What I like to talk about is this thing called bicycles, because I think that's something that nobody has talked about. Every one of us live in a house or in terrace house, and nowadays we are acquiring cars. Every single terrace house that I go to and look at has got at least 3 cars, if not 4 cars. In the past, maybe 1 or 2. We are spending majority of our financial resources into buying cars, into petrol, into sitting in traffic jams. And our houses look like crap because we got no more money to build nice houses. So I think the solution is to take the solution back onto our own hands, yeah? And look at this. I bike here today myself, and I tell you, biking is really easy in Malaysia. I can get from here to Lot 10, Jalan Bukit Bintang in 20 minutes. I never know that until I start biking. If you sit in a car, you probably think more than that and burn up a lot of carbon. This is Amsterdam. I think this is where we aspire to. And as planners, as architects, as developers, we need to look at this solution. I think Desert Park City in KL has done a good job. A lot of people do local transportation. I think that's the start. Just using your bicycle in your own neighborhood. Going to the groceries, going to get your lunch, going to buy your newspaper and stuff like that. You can go on a bicycle, yeah? And if you want to go further afield, you can, but let's start small. Otherwise, we will forever be stuck in this paradigm here, which is sitting in traffic jams. When the MRT is going to be built in the next few years, we will see more and more of this, let me assure you. The other thing that I really have gripes on is this thing called the gated communities. A lot of developers think that this is a positive word. To me, it's a very negative word, gated communities, because it's segregate society. Sierra Mas, Setia Eco Park, we are stratifying society into one single income group. Yeah, those that people who can afford to live in Sarawak are all millionaires. Okay, those that live in the high rises, as now I show you low costs, are all earning below $3,000 a month. So we are segregating society, and we are creating apartheid in that way. So it is, my gripe about planning is that I think we need to really seriously reconsider this whole thing about gated communities. I know crime is a problem or whatever, but let me show you an example, which is my neighborhood in Lucky Garden. I like this neighborhood because it was planned probably about 14 years ago. These are the shops here. This is the big generator here. Tampines 4 is single story, Tampines 2 is double story, Tampines 3 is single and double. Semi-detached houses are on the fringes here. Bungalows are slightly on the fringe, on some of these fringes here. And everybody gravitate towards the TMC. Yeah. So this is, it is about trying to integrate society. Yeah. The rich guy here who probably employs a chauffeur and two maids. The chauffeur and two maids are probably staying in a house here, in a single-story terrace house. Yeah. So it is about living together like that. That is what I think we should achieve in Malaysia. Not the kind of segregation that we are trying to do as planners now. This is a typical planner's plan, yeah, color-coded, big lots and things like that. And it's very, very typical. Putrajaya is a major example of this folly of the way we plan. We look at other cities, really organic. This is America. I think we are going into this direction now. We took a little example of this development, and we did a little core area here, and get it to, when we do planning, I think it's about all these little happenings that is within architecture, small little plazas, alleyways that connect, a surau, a temple, a chapel, all mixed into one. I think we are getting a bit too sensitive and self-censorship now that we are segregating society. A temple must be far away, the surau should be in the center or whatever. I think we really need to push things back into this type of relationship where our communities can worship and interact together. To me, this is what architecture and planning is all about. It's all about the people. It's very little about the building. The building is just really a setting for things like this to happen. It doesn't matter whether you're in Italy or you are in Cebu, in Sarawak. People use urban space like that, and to me, that is the measure of success of how a space is. I designed this garden in Cebu, and the pride is when I see people like this using a space. Yeah, it's not about taking a picture of the space without people in it. So a lot about people and a lot less about architecture. It's about inclusive. Malik, you mentioned the term. I'm finishing soon. Malik, give me 2 more minutes. It's about more inclusive, and it's about less exclusive. Yeah, don't ever use words like exclusive and elitist. It bugs me when I see developers using that for development, because I think good development is more than that. So I don't look forward to coming home to a stunning vertical garden. That doesn't excite me. Neither do I want to live a platinum lifestyle with a green conscience. I will not buy into a development like that, let me tell you that. It is more about stuff like this that we can, that development can try to achieve. People, smell, color, and the whole possibility of what can happen within architecture and within planning. And I think that I'll stop there.